are recording this session because we do share it out for folks who aren't able to join, who might want to review and catch some of the information that we'll be talking about here. So thanks again to everyone for joining us today, and we'll get to our slides here. All right, so we'll do just a little quick review of our agenda today. Talk about the Big Build strategy, which is probably pretty familiar to most of the folks on the call today. And then we have a speaker from Minnesota Housing here, a guest, Jennifer Bergman, who will be talking about the new local government housing programs at Minnesota Housing. So we're really pleased. She happened to be in Fergus Falls today, which is why we are here in a conference room versus sitting at our desks. So, so Jennifer will be sharing information about programs that her team is leading and developing. And then we'll have a project highlight from New York Mills and the South Point Apartments. And then I'll provide just some recap of progress around the Big Build, and certainly we'll have time for Q&A and discussion today as well. So the Big Build was launched at the end of 2019 by Otter Tail County to really work in a focused manner to increase housing investment. And so we have our 4 action areas that we focus on to, 1, increase construction of new housing to meet the various needs of household types and income levels throughout the county. We're working to build partnerships and expanding the capacity of our nonprofits, our developers, other partners to collectively work together on this, because this isn't, our housing challenges can't be addressed by any one group or one type of solution. We also work to seek funding and help our partners seek funding to support new housing development, reinvestment, home ownership, et cetera, from our partners like Minnesota Housing. And then we also advocate for increasing funding and supportive housing in ways that makes a difference for our challenges. And we've had some great success, and some of those programs are actually things that Jennifer will talk about that we have advocated for to help support things like infrastructure costs and other needs that are really barriers to housing development. So with that, I will turn it over to Jennifer Bergman, who's the Director of Local Government Housing Programs for Minnesota Housing. So thanks, Jennifer.
Yep, thank you, Amy, and thanks, everyone. Looks like you have a great turnout for your meeting, and how exciting, and thank you for welcoming Minnesota Housing to be a part of this discussion as well. So as Amy mentioned, I'm Jennifer Bergman. I'm the new Director of Local Government Housing Programs. And just for the record, I just celebrated my 3rd month anniversary yesterday. So just barely over 3 months in the position. So I have a lot to learn and look forward to hearing more from you in the future on these programs. So next slide, please. And I'd just kind of like to start out with the big picture of Minnesota Housing and what our vision is and what our mission is. Our vision is all Minnesotans live and thrive in stable, safe, and accessible home that they can afford in a community of their choice. And our mission is housing as the foundation, is foundational to a full life and thriving state. So we equitably collaborate with individuals, communities, and partners to create, preserve, and finance a housing that is affordable. So Minnesota Housing has been structured with really 2 divisions, multifamily and a single family division. Well, when the legislature approved all of these new programs at the last session in 2023, Minnesota Housing really took a look at these new programs to figure out where they really fit within the structure of Minnesota Housing. And Commissioner Ho and Deputy Commissioner Rachel Robinson really decided that it was best to create a new department that would be created to work directly with our local units of government throughout the state. So cities, counties, as well as HRAs, as well as our tribal nations. So this department, I was the first hire in this department in November. We have since added a couple of other positions. Our manager of rental assistance is Deborah Schaff, who comes to us with 18 years experience at the Cloquet Carlton HRA. And then our manager of local program grants is Annie Ryerson, who's been with the agency for a little over 8 years. She is also on this call today. And so really key people to keep in touch with as we work through these programs. Next slide, please. So I'm going to spend today just talking about the new programs that are within this department. And as I mentioned, these are really the programs that were geared towards local units of government. So first is the Bring It Home Rental Assistance, Local Housing Trust Fund, Greater Minnesota Infrastructure Program, Lead Safe Homes, Local Affordable Housing Aid, Statewide Affordable Housing Aid, and then the Tier 2 cities. You'll see that some of these have multiple parts, and I'll just go through each one of these really briefly and just kind of an overview. So the new Bring It Home Rental Assistance Program was probably one of the biggest programs that came out of the last legislative session. It was funded by state appropriations, statewide, and then by a regional sales tax in the metro area. The Bring It Home Rental Assistance was really to be modeled after the federal HUD Section 8 program or Housing Choice Voucher program, and it can be provided both as tenant assistance or as a project-based assistance. Right now, we're in the process of developing a formula that will go to the program administrator. So the way the statute is written is that local organizations, HRAs primarily, who are currently administering a housing choice voucher program are the eligible applicants under this program. We are estimating to have an additional 5,000 vouchers added throughout the state of Minnesota to really enhance the housing choice voucher program. Next slide. So going into our next program is our local housing trust funds, which you may have heard of. The first appropriation was given to this program back in 2022 with $1 million appropriated to this program. And then the legislature added another $4.8 million in 2023. The program guide for this program was actually already approved by the Minnesota Housing Board in 2023, and this will be one of the big priorities of Annie Ryerson, our new manager of local grants. These funds can be used on a wide range of housing-related activities, and they're matching funds up to 100% of new public revenue up to $150,000. One of the things I like to point out on this is that public revenue is actually defined as local funds that were committed on or after June 29th of 2021. So the legislature went back a bit. Other thing to note about this is that state funds are not eligible as a match under the Local Housing Trust Fund. Right now, we're in the process of, we'll be meeting with the Northland Foundation, which was a legislatively named grant for local housing trust funds. And Annie and I are going to be meeting with that organization. That $1 million was really allocated for them to provide technical assistance for cities, counties who wanted to create a local housing trust fund. So we're starting with what that technical assistance looks like with the Northland Foundation. So we'll be meeting with them actually this week. And the next slide. The next program within our department is the Greater Minnesota Housing Infrastructure Program. So this is another grant program. Up to 50% of capital costs for public infrastructure can be covered for, the necessary curb, gutter, street, sewer, water, those necessary infrastructure costs to get a workforce housing development going. The grants in this program are limited to $30,000 per lot for 1 to 4 units, and then $180,000 per lot for multifamily, which is 5 or more units. Cities are limited to $500,000 over a 2-year period on this. Another thing about this program is also matching funds cannot be state matched as well with this program.
And I'll just add into that, as we'll hear a little bit in our project example coming up, Otter Tail County does have a cash infrastructure match program that we hope will be able to be layered into this program. So I want our communities and development partners to know that we have that resource to help with that non-state match from the county's perspective.
Nice, that's great. And that's, I know one of the things that these programs in the legislature was really hoping was that it would incentivize local units of government to invest funds in there, and these funds could be used for, as a match as well. Our next program is the new Lead Safe Homes. This is also known as the Dustin Luke Shields Act. Dustin Luke Shields was actually poisoned or harmed by lead hazards not once, but twice. And so this program was really named after him to try to remediate lead risks. So this funds can be used for remediation or for risk assessments. These funds will also be distributed through a competitive process, and we're expecting that this program will probably be towards the end of 2024 before we start developing this program. So I think since I've been in my position, most of the questions that I'm getting from cities and counties is around SAHA and LAHA. So local housing aid, statewide affordable housing aid, Department of Revenue actually named them LAHA and SAHA. So I'm going to get into a little more detail on LAHA and SAHA. So LAHA, Local Affordable Housing Aid, was created to help metropolitan local units of government meet their housing needs through affordable housing development projects and support for organizations and individuals in maintaining stable and affordable housing. So all cities in the metro area with a population over 10,000 will be getting an allocation, as well as all 7 counties in the metro area. The LAHA program is funded through a tax that was approved in the 7-county metro. Of that sales tax, it's 1/4 cent sales tax. 25% of that will go to cities in the metro area over 10,000, and 50% will be going to the 7 counties in the metro area. The other 25% of that sales tax is going to bring it home rental assistance for the 7-county metro. So the Department of Revenue is collecting the sales tax, and then they're actually going to be the ones that will distribute the funds similar to local government aid. So LGA, kind of those same dates. The first disbursement for LAHA will be in July of 2024. We finally, in January, got the first estimates from the October sales tax, and they're running about 12% under their projections. We also just recently received the December numbers as well, also running a little bit lower than projections. So we anticipate that revenue will be doing new projections probably at the end of the month or sometime into March. So the next one is the statewide affordable housing aid. So all of you should have, all cities and counties should have gotten your first allocation of SAHA funds at the end of December. So again, these are funds that were appropriated by the legislature for this program and distributed from the Department of Revenue. So all counties, all 87 counties in the state, as well as cities over 10,000 in population, and 7 of the 11 tribes will be getting an allocation. There's appropriation for 23 and 24 of $22.5 million. And as mentioned, the Department of Revenue determined the funding amounts for that, and then those will be distributed in 24 along with the same timelines as LGA. So that is SAHA. Then the next slide, please. Then the legislature said, well, what about all of those communities that have less than 10,000 in greater Minnesota? They appropriated $4.5 million for what is being known as the SAHA Tier 2 Local Cities Grants. This will be a competitive program that will be available to those communities not in a metropolitan area with a population of less than 10,000. The minimum award size for this is $25,000. We have not yet determined a maximum. I'm currently working on that. This can also be used for the same things that SAHA and LAHA can be used for, and I'm going to get into a little more detail on the eligible projects or qualifying projects with that. So LAHA and SAHA, and again with the Tier 2 competitive grant, any funds under these programs must be spent on a qualifying project. And those qualifying projects are emergency rental assistance, financial support to nonprofit affordable housing providers, and then a variety of different housing activities, including construction, acquisition, rehab, demolition. Those can be found in the statute for LAHA at 477A35 and 36 for SAHA. And I really point you to that because there are some additional requirements under the SAHA program as well. So, but really a broad range of uses for SAHA. So one of the biggest questions I think I've been asked is, can we just put our SAHA funds into a local housing trust fund and consider those funds spent? So the answer to that question that we've now confirmed is no. You can put those funds into your local housing trust fund. However, you still have to verify that it was spent on a qualifying project. If after 3 years, those funds have not been spent on a qualifying project, then you can share that with Minnesota Housing in your report, and they can potentially be transferred then permanently into your local housing trust. So LAHA and SAHA is also another one of those programs that's interesting and unique to Minnesota Housing, because Minnesota Housing's role in LAHA and SAHA really is collecting reports. So any community, city, county who receives SAHA or LAHA must submit a report to Minnesota Housing by December 1st of 2025 that tells us what you spent the funds on, and so that we can verify that it is a qualifying project. And so one of the reasons that we're really here and trying to reach out across the state as much as we possibly can is biggest part of our job here is to support our local units of government. So we want to be here to help you find uses for your SAHA funds, and any way we can be a reference or a resource for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. We want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Minnesota Housing does not want this money back. If you don't spend it on a qualifying project, we get it. We would rather have you spend this money. I think one of the biggest messages from the legislature in 2023 around these programs was, let's give control to our local units of government, that what Otter Tail County needs may be different than Freeborn or Kitson or Anoka County. You local units of government really understand what your housing needs are. So how can we support you in getting these funds out the door? So the other thing about SAHA and LAHA is that they are permanent programs. So LAHA is permanent with a sales tax, and SAHA does have tails. So there are appropriations going forward. For 25 and 26, there's $2 million for the 37 greater Minnesota cities, 1.2 million for the tribal nations, and then another 1.25 for that Tier 2 program. So I know that's a lot to share, a lot to digest. Here on your screen, I am sharing some information on our website. I will warn you, the other thing that is one of our priorities is building out this website. And then the other thing that I would like to share also is that we do have some FAQs that we hope to be posting probably by mid-March, so that cities and counties will have a resource. Those FAQs will be posted here on our webpage at Minnesota Housing.
So thanks, Jennifer. We can take some time for questions now. You can drop them in the chat. Let us know. I have a couple questions.
Sure.
And I think, we have a lot of smaller communities in Otter Tail County that would qualify for the tier 2 eligibility potentially on that housing aid. Do you have a timeline of when you anticipate that program coming out from that competitive process?
Yes, so for the tier 2, so Annie, are you on the call? If Annie, if you wouldn't mind.
I am, yes. Hello.
Annie, would you want to introduce yourself and maybe you can share a little bit about our timelines?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Annie Ryerson. I am the new manager of the local government housing programs. I've been in my role for just over a month, but I have been with Minnesota Housing for almost 8 years, and do have a history of building out new programs in the agency. So I'm excited to be working with all of you to create these new programs and help support your communities. Most of these programs have not even begun to be built yet. We're kind of in the early stages of that program development. So it does take a little bit of time for us to just build out the program guidelines and the RFP processes so that we can make it an easy process for anyone who's interested in applying for these funds. Our goal timeline is to release the tier 2 cities and the Greater Minnesota Infrastructure Grant Programs midsummer, hopefully July to August. The application will be open for those programs. That timeline is very tentative and reliant on the programs being built out and nothing, interrupting that process. So those timelines could change, but that is the goal that we're aiming for. The Local Housing Trust Fund program could potentially roll out a little bit sooner since, as Jennifer mentioned, that program manual has been developed. So we already have the framework for that program. We just need to develop the RFP process and coordinate the timing of those funds with Northland Foundation and their legislatively named grant. That's about as far as we've gotten as far as building out timelines, but really hoping to get these programs up and running and available to you as soon as possible.
Thanks, Annie. I appreciate that. Is there any questions that were in the chat?
One question in the chat from Maria. If a county applies for LAHA, can a city apply for SAHA? How does that work?
If a county applies for SAHA, can a city apply for LAHA? Is that
I think the clarification is the metro. LAHA is for metro.
Correct? It is.
Yeah, so just want to talk through that one again. So LAHA is for metro areas, 7 counties in the metro.
Correct.
SAHA is for the rest of greater Minnesota. And then tier 2 is for those smaller communities across the state.
Yep, so maybe I'll clarify. LAHA is the 7 counties and the metro cities over 10,000.
Okay.
SAHA is all 87 counties
Okay.
and cities in greater Minnesota over 10,000. And the tier 2 is for greater Minnesota cities under 10,000 in greater Minnesota.
Okay.
So there is no real application for LAHA and SAHA. Those were direct appropriations to those cities and counties. For the tier 2, you would need to be a city under 10,000 in population in greater Minnesota to be eligible to apply. I think that answers it.
Yeah. So that's the only part that's an application process would be for those 10,000 or fewer cities in greater Minnesota.
Correct.
Good clarification. And these slides will be sent out, just, so I think just to know that for folks on the call too, we'll send these slides out so you'll be able to reference back to those program points that Jennifer shared.
Julie Lammers from Burgess, you have your hand raised. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. On the tier 2, okay, if it's not coming out for application until July or August, when would the money need to be spent? So would we be able to construct a home in 2025?
So that is a good question. And what I'm going to do is write that question down and I'm going to follow back up with you with an answer on that.
And certainly as more details come out on these programs, we'll continue to share them out to all the communities and partners, that we have. If you receive this invite, you're on our distribution list. And if you this was shared with you, make sure to let us know so we can get you added to our distribution list if you weren't a direct recipient of this, the link for this call.
I can
Then
just
my one
add to the timeline with grants at Minnesota Housing. Typical grant contracts are 3 years with the ability to extend up to 5 years. State funds do need to be spent within 5 years. They can't be, contracts can't be extended beyond that process. Since the Tier 2 cities program hasn't been developed yet, we don't have an official timeline, but most grant contracts at the agency are 3-year grant contracts.
Thank you, Amy.
Yep.
And then another question in the chat, maybe just another clarification, is the application process for infrastructure grants and the Greater Minnesota Tier 2 program run through the local county?
Like, who would be the applicant? Is that how you're reading that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Or maybe Weichert was who asked the question. So if you want to unmute, I don't know who exactly is on from Weichert, but if you want to unmute and
Sorry,
clarify that question.
Yeah.
Yep, so the basic question is, like, if we are looking to apply for a grant for that to build like low income housing, do we just connect directly with our local county government?
Yes, I think that Tier 2 cities, it would be at the city level. Yeah, we're always, available at the county level to provide technical support, for any applications or help with any data or information as we can at the county, but I think both would probably be city. Does that seem right?
And then a little bit expanding on that, could, in theory, I know it's not fully developed yet, but in theory, could that Greater Minnesota grant be used to like fund a low income housing project from the purchase of the land to the sale of the improved property? Like, could it fund the entire build?
It'd be part of the project financing. So all the financing would need to be put together and it would be a component of it.
Right, are you talking specifically about the Tier 2, the Greater Minnesota Infrastructure Grant? Which program?
Might be both.
Yeah.
All right, I think specifically this would be the Greater Minnesota Tier 2 like local cities grant, just because we are small cities here.
And so could it be used to fund the entire project? Is that the question?
Yes.
So again, there will be about 2.25 million in the first round. And eligible costs certainly would include construction, would include demolition if you're doing, a redevelopment type project, rehab. There are a lot of different eligible expenses in there. I guess I would see that probably more as one of the line items in your overall development cost. So when you're looking at your total project cost, that might be one of the ways to fill those gaps.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah.
One other comment in the chat, just reading through it, there was a question. What kind of help could you offer to assist developers to better understand the process and how best to use the grant money?
Excellent question, and thank you so much for asking it. I said at the beginning of my presentation, really one of the reasons that they created this department was to have staff at Minnesota Housing really available to work with our local units of government and our partners throughout the state. Here is what we are building out a team. And so we are also going to be hiring people who are going to be available for technical assistance. We are going to plan on doing education. For the time being, you can contact myself or Annie when it comes to these local government housing programs. And if it's okay, I would also like to introduce Deborah Schaff, who joined us also. She is our manager of rent assistance. So the Bring It Home Rental Assistance Program, Deborah is going to be the person on our team with the answers, or will get the answers to the questions you have. So
Great. Welcome. All right. Well, we'll plan to preserve some time at the end as well. So if you have additional questions that come up, and I think the next slide is Jennifer's contact information. And again, we'll be sending these slides out. So feel free to reach out to Jennifer or us here at the county with additional questions, and we can make sure they get directed to the right space for that. So thank you again, Jennifer, for joining us, and Annie for hopping online and answering questions as well. As mentioned, we wanted to also do a project highlight of a community that is advancing new housing development with New York Mills and the South Point Apartments. And we have Julie Roberts, who is the city clerk, and Latham Hetland, a city council member, ready to share some information about that project and the journey that it took to get to where things are today. So turn it over to the two of you to do that. Sarah will advance your slides.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Julie, I can just kind of, I figure my perspective as a council member is a little more high level than what I think you can touch on. So I can kind of just talk about a little bit of where we started on the path and how we kind of got to this point now. So the first slide is a really cool picture. The second slide, if you want to go to that one, kind of focuses on the actual timeline. I want to start just a little bit before that. The city hadn't bought any new land in, probably at least a decade, 2 decades, somewhere around there. And we were presented with the opportunity to buy an 80-acre parcel in the late 2010s. And we took advantage of that opportunity because we didn't really know where our next area of growth would be, but we felt like we had a lot of pieces to be a community that could be part of that growth. So we took the plunge and purchased that property. We didn't really know what we were going to do with it. We were hoping some kind of housing, but we didn't really know. And that's kind of, after that, the big build conversation started happening. So we kind of got involved with that, started being aware of new ideas that we could be going for with that. And then that all kind of culminated at the this tour of New York Mills. Julie, do you want to touch on that?
Sure, I can take it from there. Back in I believe it was in August of 2021, had a conversation with Amy Baldwin and Barbara Dacey over at Otter Tail County. And they brought a group over and we did a show and tell of what is our potential here in New York Mills. What housing areas do we have? All as a result of they were going into the housing study. Barbara was really charged on developing different things and paying attention to both sides of the county. And so they came over and we did a little tour one day. And I remember that day because she says, "Ooh, look," Barbara says, "Ooh, look at this big piece of property. What are you doing with this?" And I said, "Well, actually, we aren't planning to do anything for a little while because, we just don't have bonds dropping off and whatnot." She says, "Oh, well, I'll have to see if I can change your mind." Well, then lo and behold, not long after that, Amy had a conversation with me about, I met up with this developer at this conference and, he may be interested in looking at that. Can I share your name with them? And then that whole conversation got started, and that was back in 2021. And when they finished that housing study, I think that really got Michael Goldman's attention because it showed the actual need in our area. And I really accredit that to being able to pull that developer into our area up here to Otter Tail County. His other site was not in Otter Tail County. So we were really fortunate that those conversations had been had. Then in January, we had a meeting, no, it was in December. We had a meeting with Michael Goldman and his group, and we had Lunds involved in it and the school, just the parties to be here in Mills. And we discussed, what is our need and what could we offer Goldman for different ideas. And we came up with the tax abatement. And then he took that back and called back. And in January, we had a real serious meeting. It was a Zoom meeting. And he said, if I can make things work there, cash flow wise and whatnot, I'd really be interested in that. And so we connected up, and in May, he did apply for the tax abatement. And then we worked on that through 2022. We worked on that. We did get that tax abatement approved by the county, the city, and the school district. And then we because it was all approved, we did go ahead and he did purchase, it's a roughly a 5-acre piece of that 80 acres that we had purchased. And we actually then drew up the plan around the amount of space he would need. And we were fortunate because we did not need to put any major lift stations or anything in. The parcel that he's putting that on is all gravity fed. So getting the infrastructure there wasn't overwhelmingly expensive. So in that respect, then we started talking about applying for the infrastructure grant through Otter Tail County. And we were awarded $100,000 from Otter Tail County to help us with extending our utilities out there so that we could accommodate this large apartment building. And that got everything going forward. Then the city, we could handle the rest of the cost. And then let me see here, where am I at on this timeline?
You're right
Then
around June to October.
Pardon?
You're close to October now.
Yeah, but then infrastructure contract came in. We were able to secure that, got the infrastructure put in. And then the groundbreaking happened in October of 23. This was a long process, but these things don't happen overnight. And I know my council and my people here in town is it still going to happen? Is it still going to happen? And I'm like, well, apparently none of you have gone through this process before because this doesn't happen quickly. So we're real excited that that Goldman's did decide to come here. This will be a great addition to New York Mills. When this, people are excited about this. They've probably 6 months ago or more, people were asking, how do we get on a list to get into this building? Who do we call? Who do we call to get on a list? So Michael Goldman's already been taking names on people who would like to get into this facility. It's going to be at least a 10% increase to our population if this pulls in new people. We're hoping this does a gravitation of maybe some people moving out of some of the starter home level homes that we have here in New York Mills, because a lot of our housing inventory are older, smaller homes. We're hoping that people gravitate around and maybe it'll have some opportunities for some families to get into some of those homes now that have like 1 or 2 older people living in them, and maybe they'd like to live in something with less maintenance. And so this opens up a lot of potential for New York Mills, and we're real excited about it. So do you have anything to add to that, Latham?
You did great. I just kind of overall, it was just a really good timing of everything with the partnership with the county and with all the partners, and just the energy that the city has in the last 5 years has really just led us all to a really exciting spot for our community too. So.
Yeah, so if you want to advance, I just want to show you some of the progress pictures. October 26th, we had our groundbreaking out at the site, and Otter Tail County, Eric Osberg came out and did a nice video. We got it out on social media. We got a lot of publicity on that. Then if you want to advance to the next one, this is what the site looked like when they first started. The apartment building's going, from what I can recall from everything, it's a 60-unit building. It's going to have a workout facility in it. It's going to have some common space for larger gatherings, so people have a space if they have a lot of people over. It's going to have some outdoor areas for people to use. It does sit right next to a walking path, sits just to the south of that the city put in. And we're also working on a dog park that sits just to the north of it. So they really are making quick progress of it. If you advance to the next, this was in November. They had already gotten a lot of the site work done, started some of the foundation work, as you can see. Then January, we've got substantial progress already going there. And then in February, if you want to advance one more, this was actually last Wednesday. They had all the stories on it. I'm not exactly sure what point this roof goes on, but I understand, yesterday somebody told me that the crane's been removed, so I assume the roofing's on, Teddy? And unmute. Well, anyway, oh,
There we
got
go.
it.
I'm sorry. I was
No, that's
clicking on my
okay.
picture and it wouldn't let me unmute. Yes, the crane has moved. They got up all the roof trusses they could with the crane, but as you see in those pictures, the spot where there isn't any, the crane couldn't reach. So they had to set that with another piece of equipment, and it doesn't pay to have that crane sit there any longer. So they removed it, and they are currently almost have the whole roof sheeted, or the wood is on the roof, and gonna start hopefully putting the shingles on in the next couple of weeks.
That is awesome. Yeah, is there anything else you want to add to the facility as far as what is going to be in it? I think I hit the things, most of the things.
Yeah, everything you mentioned is going to be there. There's the units are 1 bedroom to 2 bedroom, 2 bedroom with a den. I think there's a couple 3 bedrooms in there. Granite countertops, carpet in the bedrooms, LVP flooring, and electronic access to get into the building and to the units themselves.
Great. Thank you, Teddy. So in summary on the project, this picture we have here is a rendering that Mr. Goldman shared with me. But on all these type of projects, the importance of partnerships was amazing in this progress on this apartment building. It was a county level, it was the city, it was school district, getting a developer involved, the partnerships and the networking you do is so important to do this for your community. This, like I said, is amazing growth for our city. It's potential for a good 10% increase in our population. And, you know, it really contributes to the county's goal of growth. My understanding is this is a 12-month build, so the estimated completion should be late fall. So stay tuned on it. Hopefully we can give you some progress pictures over the next year as this produces into a great asset for our community. You have any questions on it?
Great, thanks, Julie. Thanks, Latham. Teddy, questions for anyone? I see, yeah, I think there people are answering in the chat, so that's good. Feel free to drop them in if you have additional questions. Or unmute, raise your hand. All right, well, I just had a few quick slides to share as well, and we can you know, certainly keep Q&A open on the chapter or online once we wrap up. So again, as mentioned, want to highlight just some of our 2023 progress. So countywide, we saw 491 new or substantially rehabbed homes within the county, and 410 of those being new units. We still are offering our tax rebate program, and we had 82 applications, and those are for single family homes being built as a primary residence. This year currently is the last year anticipated of that program at this time. It was intended to be a limited duration program, so it'd be up to policymakers to extend that or not, but right now the application window would close at the end of the calendar year for that. But all in all, that totaled over $100 million of new housing investment from both that new construction and rehab. And we offered or approved 4 grants through our Community Growth Partnership program to our cities, one including public infrastructure that Julie mentioned, as well as affordable housing and planning grants to support you know, more detailed housing studies or infrastructure design work that needs to get done to support housing projects. So again, for our local communities, keep in mind we have those matching grants available to support projects throughout the county. And then from some specific projects that we've been working on. We closed out our Battle Lake Hidden Meadows, which was in partnership with the city there for 3 new single-family homes supported by Minnesota Housing. Appreciate that funding that was provided to the county for the construction financing, a low interest loan for that part, and then value gap grant dollars that make up the difference between that cost of construction and what that entry-level home will sell for in the market from an appraised value perspective. So I appreciate Minnesota Housing's partnership on that. We've advanced the Pelican Rapids Highway Garage redevelopment site, now known as Pinewood Estates. We had worked on the plat last year, got that going for the 9 units of new single-family lots that will be available. And also we're awarded the same funds that were received for Hidden Meadows for 3 homes in Pelican Rapids that will hopefully plan to kickstart that new subdivision in the city of Pelican Rapids to get new homes there and that are desperately needed as well. Continued work on the North Fields of Dalton from an affordable senior rental perspective. These are units that we anticipate owning and operating through our HRA to support that and hopefully be a model for planning in other communities, New York Mills, Otter Tail, and Burgess, for this triplex model of affordable senior rental in communities where these seniors are already living, and help them stay in their communities where they have the networks, the social connections, and familiarity, but then, as Julie mentioned, hopefully open up those single family homes that might be suited from an affordability level for a new family. So that work continued, and we're in 2024 now, and that also will be an emphasis this year. And then we just heard about the South Point project as well, that we provided support for financially, and help just support that project wherever it was needed. So those are, those take time. And so we talked about these projects in multiple years, and you just saw that time frame from New York Mills, that it does take 2 to 3 years to pull together some of these bigger projects, because it is complex to get housing moving forward in greater Minnesota. So yeah, and then we continue our outreach and communications. We hosted an in-person housing event last fall. We'll continue these quarterly virtual convenings on the off quarters when we don't have an in-person event. Try to get the word out to our media through press releases on either programs or successes or projects. A lot of social media. Sarah, thank you for most of this communication work. Again, trying to raise the awareness of either our programs or again, of these opportunities or successes in our communities. And through our email newsletters and presentations to our city councils, other partner organizations, chambers, etc. We also redesigned our website last year to hopefully make the programs more consumable by those who are looking for the resources, and can help get at least a start on what supports might be available. We did just released our annual report from 2023 for our community development and housing team. So that includes more than just our housing work, our childcare, workforce, business development, etc. We have that available. This will be sent out via a link. When you get the slides, you'll be able to access the summary document of the work we did in 2023, some of the pieces I just highlighted, as well as more information. And we are available to make those presentations. So if there is a group within your business, a management team, or your city council or EDA or service organization, if there's anyone that convenes that would like to hear more about the work we're doing and potentially partner and continue to work towards our shared goals, we're happy to do that. So reach out if there's any of those opportunities. I've got a few on my calendar here coming up in the next couple months that absolutely will make time to do that wherever there's an interested audience. And then just our housing programs themselves, you can find that information at the county's website. There's a quick link for housing resources, or you can go straight to ottertailcounty.gov/housing to see the different programs and organized for homeowners, home buyers, builders, developers, and then our city resources, as well as other housing resources. So check that out. And then we do have a now kind of a cleaner summary, I would say, that we can handout or print to leave behind for the programs that we have. So we have our grant program, community growth partnership for our city partners. Those are specifically applications by cities to support eligible projects in the communities. And then we have our programs for builders and landlords, gap loans for multifamily, rehab for existing rental properties. That's very low interest and really can support that reinvestment. And then for our homeowners and home buyers, we have expanded down payment assistance to help get people into homes, rehab for our single family homes, emergency home repair, and then our tax rebate program that I mentioned as well, that provides a future refunding of those property taxes for new single family homes. So just a snapshot of those programs. We're always happy to answer questions or have a conversation about how these tools and resources might fit into your individual housing needs or opportunities. And this is in addition, we have, we support the use of tax abatement, tax increment financing, some of those more programmatic tools, as well as leveraging other partner organizations like Minnesota Housing and others to make sure we're bringing those resources into projects here in Otter Tail County. So again, just our folks that were on the call today, and watch for a follow-up email. I'm happy to take any additional questions. Was there anything in the chat, Sarah?
Oh, a couple of questions that looks like Teddy will be able to answer on the New York Mills project, but nothing else. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. Otherwise, like Amy mentioned, we'll send out these slides and then a recording as well of today's meeting. So look for that this afternoon.
Anything else, Jennifer, from Minnesota Housing?
No, just thank you for the opportunity and look forward to hearing more. What exciting things you have going on in Otter Tail County. I was playing around on your website at the same time. How exciting. Good for you guys. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. Appreciate you being here today. And to everyone on the call, just again, thank you for your interest and partnership in working to address our housing challenges in Otter Tail County, because they are not things we're going to solve alone. So let us know, again, if there's any questions. We'll stay on here on our end for a few more minutes if folks want to stay on and ask any questions now or reach out in the future. Great. Thanks, everyone.